Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcast. You watch it on YouTube, like button, subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. It's a good thing you stuck with us because this team has become very interesting and very relevant. Quite a change from most Decembers in recent years. Anyway, big game on Sunday, so I'm going to bring on ESPN's Jordan Raanan to talk about the Giants. Get to know a team that Washington will be very familiar with over the next 3 weeks, playing them twice. And really, if they go in and if Washington can somehow sweep these games, huge for their playoff chances, of course. And that's why these games are really big and they're going to be a lot of fun. So stick around for a couple minutes, and I'm going to bear with me for a couple minutes, and then stick around for Jordan, and he'll fill you in on the Giants. And again, get to know. Listen, I think after hearing him, you might feel a little bit better about these two games. But first, let's go over a couple of news and notes and nuggets from Wednesday's practice, interview sessions, etc. I'm going to stick mostly to injuries here, but bear with me. So the first thing is corner Benjamin St-Juste did not practice on Wednesday. He does have what I was told was a mid to kind of a low to mid ankle sprain, not a high ankle sprain, but more of a mid. And so when you get that, if you have a bad high ankle sprain, you're going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. Something like this, it's just going to have to run its course. I would not rule him out for Sunday. I don't know when he'll be back, but again, it's basically an ankle sprain. So, we'll see if he's out there on Thursday and or Friday. Certainly, if he's not out there Friday, then you can write him off for Sunday. I will say, if he's going to miss a couple games, the Falcons last week and the Giants this week are games where you can afford to miss him just because of the receiving talent that those teams do not have, especially the Giants. Again, stick around for Jordan's insight because he'll tell you what they have and really what they still don't have. So that's the update on St-Juste. Right guard Trey Turner did not practice. He has a knee and an ankle injury, has been playing pretty well at guard ever since he came back off the injuries. So the interesting part here will be that if he doesn't go, Sam Cosmi would play there. And this is where I think Cosmi could be a really good guard, depending on what they do at tackle in the future. But I don't think the ideal was to move him there this year. They certainly knew they could. And if Turner hadn't been playing well, I think they definitely would have done that maybe a little bit earlier. But Cosmi is a terrific run blocker. He has not really played guard. He's only played a couple snaps there. So this is going to be something very new to him. But, and when you're going, keep in mind, one of the reasons that Cosmi has been rotating with Cornelius Lucas at right tackle is because Cosmi still only has use of 3 fingers in his left hand. That's a problem. So it certainly inhibits him if they're trying to, defend pass rushes and all that. He can block down, and he's done really well in the run game, But in the pass game, it could inhibit you with having to, if you're having to help down here and try and get your hands on a guy. If you only have the use of 3 fingers, it's a problem. Inside, things are going to happen a lot faster. They're going to happen against bigger fellas. So that's something he's going to have to contend with and get used to. I do like him in there. And again, I think that's where his future, where he could be really good there. And I think he could be a fine right tackle who's a really good run blocker, or he could be a really good guard, similar to what Brandon Sheriff was inside there. And I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro, but I think his talent is going to be more suited for that down the road. And so we'll see what happens here. I do like that they're going to try and get their best 5 linemen on the field. Cornelius Lucas has done a fine job, a solid job at tackle, replacing him. So he deserves props for that. But it enables them to then be a little bit more creative to get their best guys on the field. Instead of taking Lucas off, you can slide Cosmi inside now, where he can be a big help. And I've told you before, when this team looks at their line, the way they look at it in terms of importance, it's left tackle, center, right guard. So right guard becomes that third most important spot for them, and you can slide Cosme inside there, and they hope that it would certainly solidify it. I don't know that this would be something long term in terms of this season, even if and when Turner comes back, because Turner's has been much better lately when they're going to a lot more power runs inside. I think that fits him. Some of those duo plays, the runs that we saw the last couple of weeks, I think that fits them well. It fits what he and Andrew Norwell do well, and that's what they need to keep doing, to be honest. And so we'll see with Cosme. But anyways, if Turner doesn't go, then Cosme would go inside. And if Turner does go, then Cosme and Lucas would continue to rotate at right tackle. So Chase Young, is this the week? Don't know. So how's that for an answer? He was limited in practice on Wednesday. I was told that he would certainly go full on Thursday and full on Friday, so they can see, is he displaying the confidence that they need to see in that knee? I'm telling you, there was a lot of optimism after what they saw last Wednesday in practice. I don't know if they've gone above that level to where he's going to definitely play on Sunday. I certainly could not say that at this point. I think it's still very much up in the air. He needs to show them that he's confident in the knee. Again, this isn't about the health of the knee. It's all up here right now for Chase, and not blaming him, because this was a severe injury and this is your livelihood. So you're going to have to make sure, and they're going to make sure that he's 100% sold, because if you're not, then it's going to be difficult to go out there and play the way you need to. So Thursday and Friday will be the days, and then we'll go from there. So Friday afternoon, I would say, after practice, whether or not they announce it at that time, they're going to have a really good idea about his status, in addition to a guy like Benjamin St. Juste. So there you go. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and this is something that Bram and I discussed a little bit on the live stream YouTube show that he and I did Tuesday night. And by the way, if you did listen to it, go back and give it a listen. It's up there. Bram and I covered a lot of topics, looking at the playoff race and assessing the top three contenders for those final two spots. And that, of course, would be Washington, the Giants, who are both in right now, and then the Seattle Seahawks. The other teams got to do a little bit of work to get back in that discussion. So right now we focus on those teams. And then we talked a lot about Taylor Heineke and Carson Wentz, what might happen there. And I would just say what I would expect, even if Heineke goes out there and does not play well Sunday and they lose, I still think he'd be the starter in the second Giants game. And then from there, then I think you're on my sense would be at that point, you'd be on a week-to-week leash. But I do think he gets the one game where if they lay an egg, that he would continue. Anyway, we also talked about Jahan Dotson's role and why isn't he playing more? Why isn't he getting more targets? Well, first of all, they're just not throwing the ball a lot. And you have a lot of guys who need those targets. You want to get Terry McLaurin the ball and Curtis Samuel the ball and Logan Thomas the ball. Then you're going to, they're using their backs in the pass game, as we saw with Brian Robinson. We saw that with Antonio Gibson. There's just not a lot of stuff to spread around at this point. The other factor was De'Ami Brown's rise, and mostly as a blocker. He's caught a couple passes, a nice catch the other day, but really his role is that he's been really good at too is blocking. And, it's funny because Ron Rivera will talk about guys who go out on special teams and show something there and transfer that to offense. Well, De'Ami Brown as a rookie was really good on special teams at the end of the year, and they thought maybe that would translate as a receiver. It really didn't last year. He was more physical on special teams, but I think where you see it is in the run game, and that's one of the reasons why they want to get him on the field. So, for example, in the first 4 games, De'Ami Brown played 36 snaps. 20 of those were in the 4th game against the Cowboys when they started to decide to run the ball more. Coming off that disastrous Eagles game, they knew they had to start running the ball, so he started playing more then. In the last 3 games, he's played 35 snaps. So that's something to keep in mind. Dotson's snaps have gone down. Dotson's only had 4 targets since he's come back. But here's the other factor, and I said this on, this is something that came up as well today, is the use of the tight ends. I think Sam Fortier from the Washington Post asked about this to Ron Rivera. And so and clearly we've seen a rise in that. How much so? So I'm going to go game by game. First game, they used 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends 18 times. Second week, it was 4 times. Third week, 7 times. Fourth week, 16 times. Now, so that's when Dotson was playing. They were using a lot of three receiver sets. It was like 49, 67, 67, 55 of three receiver sets, a lot. So that's the point. Now, in the last 3 weeks since Dotson's returned, let's go by first the number of 2 or 3 tight end looks. Against Philly, 29. Against Houston, 26. And against Atlanta, 26. That's going to cut into Dotson's time. Typically, he's going to be out there when there's a 3 receiver set. So they've had much less 3 receiver sets in each of those games. That's why his numbers are going down. This is a run team now. So, and I know so many people have asked, was it a wasted pick? No. And Bram and I discussed that on there. No, it wasn't. This kid's going to be good. But I understand, and I also don't think they anticipated going this run heavy, given who they had at quarterback or what they thought they were going to do with this offense. But this is the way it's evolved. I still think Dotson's going to be a really good player. Again, when you watch him, the kid gets open, period. Be patient with him. So anyways, I just want to pass it along. And then another thing is, one of the benefits of being in the locker room is just, again, the casual chats you can have with players. And Nikki Javala and I were talking today with Jeremy Reeves, just talking about special teams and Tress Way. But what's really stood out to me is and one thing that I've talked about this with Jeremy too, is why this group is really good. And part of it is you have leaders like Jeremy who have been around. Like, this guy has busted his ass to get to the spot he's in now. It's why he's one of I think I really enjoy him as much as anybody, just because you know the background of what it took for him to get here, the film study, the effort. He's not a big guy, so he's got to really think. He's not the most, he's clearly a really good athlete, but comparatively, he's not going to rise to the level of some other guys in that team. So he's really got to study it. So, and he is a very smart player. And so that's one thing, but you get all that sense with him. But you also hear him talk about guys like Christian Holmes and Percy Butler and the Cam Sims of the world, those guys. And, you can throw in guys like David Mayo, who has made a career out of being on special teams. So when you have guys like that on special teams, the veterans like that, and then you get some young guys who I think are kind of hungry and just want to make their name, I think it goes a long way. And I think that's one of the reasons why those coverage units are so good. But the other thing that was very evident is Jeremy Reeves' love of playing with Tress Way, because Tress Way, there's clearly in his mind, he's like, this guy's clearly the best punter in the NFL. And the reason is, it's not just about the stats. We can all look at stats and see this, but the thing with Tress Way, and this has always jumped out to me as well, is when he talks, you hear him talk about this stuff, is the number of different ways he's going to approach each punt, and how many, I guess, tools in his toolbox as a punter that he has. And he's almost like a golfer. If you think of a high-level golfer off the tee and what they can do with the golf ball, depending on the course, right? If you have dog leg left here, you got to bend it over here. He can do that as a punter, and it's really remarkable because it doesn't happen just out of talent. That stuff does not happen just because he's talented with his leg. He's a talented athlete, but he's gotten there because he studies, he watches a lot of film of it, and he takes stuff from other punters. And it's funny because one thing I like about him is that we even asked him this summer, like, do people ask you for advice, other punters? And he's like, his advice is go do what I did and go watch the film and study it the way I did. That's what he'll say. But I like that because he's got his own little secrets. But he takes and takes, and he works and he works and he works. And he can there are times where teams are facing a punter, left-footed punter, and they think it's going to come off one way, but he can make it go another. And it really kind of screws them up. And I think it benefits when you have guys like Reeves who have been with Tress for a while, who know where that ball is going to go and can read. And Way will tell them, like, they know where he's going to punt the ball coming out of the huddle, but he also sometimes can anticipate it as well, just because he's played with them for so long. But it's just a camaraderie there, and they're very much in sync. And don't forget, like, I'll say this, the special teams are also a key reason why this team has won 6 out of 7. And it's guys like Tress Way and Jeremy Reeves. They deserve some props. Anyway, that's it from me. Big game Sunday, so get yourself ready. So I'm going to do that for you by playing my conversation with ESPN's Jordan Raanan. All right, Jordan. So it's been a while since we've chatted, and the last time we talked, I did not see the Giants being 7-4 at this point. How about you?
2 winning teams, John.
And when's the last time that's happened with these teams? been a while.
Yeah, I mean, what was Washington in 2016? The final week of the season, they were trying to make the playoffs. I don't know if they were actually over 500 or not. Were they?
They finished 8-7-1, and the Giants, of course, they made the playoffs, but they won that game to stop them from getting it, to stop Washington from getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's probably it. 8-6-1, I guess they were at that time. The Giants beat them in the finale when they had nothing to play for.
Right.
And you remember what happened after that game? Odell Beckham.
The
boat trip right out of FedEx Stadium, basically.
That's fantastic. You know, there have been a couple of things that have happened here since that game as well, and you may have heard.
So, yeah, for sure.
So, how is this team 7-4?
Yeah, they have a recipe for success, and it's worked a lot this year. Don't make mistakes. Stay close into the fourth quarter. Execute in the fourth quarter. You know, run the football. Rely on Daniel Jones to make plays late in games. They don't have a greatly talented team. We know that. The roster is certainly limited. They have holes all over the place. Now, they've gotten beat up over the past few weeks, and they played better competition, and you sort of saw a market correction, right? Because let's think about it, John. The reality is you're not going to win every close game. And they were winning every close game. Right. They had 4 fourth quarter comebacks in the first 6 wins, right? They were undefeated in games decided by 8 points or less. So yeah, they were like 6-0 or 7-0 at one point. But and so eventually that's going to correct. But they're able to run the ball. They're able to do enough defensively, at least when they were healthy. They were. It's been a little struggle the last 3 out of 4 weeks, minus the Texans game, because they don't really count as an NFL team at the moment. But yeah, so they played pretty well defensively. They blitzed the heck out of you. Wink Martindale, everything you saw in Baltimore, same thing here, same applies here, including the fact that when he doesn't have cornerbacks, you start seeing bad things happen, which is what's happened the last couple of weeks. And run the football, Saquon Barkley. That's their offense. They have no other weapons. Like,
it's amazing.
You watch their wide receiver core, you'll be like, who are these guys? I mean, literally.
It's amazing how little talent they have at the receiver core. Now, let's stick on defense real quick though, because what I'm curious too is the health of this team, because that's a big question. That was a question last week and a big question now. So where are they at in terms of health? How many guys might be missing for Sunday as we tape this on Tuesday?
Yeah, we'll see how it progresses as the week comes along. But last week, remember, they're playing on the short week. They're playing on Thanksgiving. So they get really beat up in the game on Sunday, then have to play on Thursday. So they lose a bunch, 6 starters from that game on the Sunday then did not play. They had 6 new starters by Thursday. So that's a ridiculous turnaround. But in general, the Giants had a couple guys that were getting very close. Right tackle Evan Neal, tight end Daniel Bellinger, and outside linebacker Azeez Ojulari. 3 of their better players, starters. I mean, Evan Neal hasn't played great as a rookie, but 3 guys that are meaningful players to this team are likely to return or getting close to returning this week. Then you got a couple more. You got their starting left guard and Ben Bredesen. You could have as many as 6 or 7 starters returning for the Giants this week. Now, I'm not saying they're all going to start. Some of them have missed. Azeez Ojulari has basically missed most of the year. He has 2 calf injuries. He really hasn't played much. So, yeah, he's probably like a situational pass rusher. But they're getting back a lot of their guys for this game. Potentially, by the way, 3/5 of their offensive line. So that should help, especially in the run game. Even when they're healthy, they're not a great pass blocking team. So if they have to get into pass blocking situations against this Washington front, they're in trouble. But the run game, that's the strength of pretty much everyone on their offensive line. That's where you can see them do some serious damage.
Defensively, where are the trouble spots there?
Well, they were down their top 2 cornerbacks. So Dory Jackson's not coming back for this game. So really, they don't have a number 1 cornerback. Fabian Moreau's coming back, but he's Fabian Moreau.
This team knows him well, or these fans know him well.
He's played pretty well this season for a guy who was a waiver claim at the beginning, or actually might have been signed off as a free agent. He was to the practice squad, actually. But so Terry McLaurin has a good matchup, whether Fabian Moreau comes back or not, right? That's a huge problem for the secondary, really all around, because they've also lost Xavier McKinney, who he's got a mangled hand. He's not coming back this week. So really, you could say quarters of their starting secondary is not healthy. Darnay Holmes in the slot has struggled, as you saw on Thanksgiving, as he got flagged left and right, the trifecta of flags. But yeah, I think that's where you start with middle linebacker, inside linebacker. The Giants are starting Jalen Smith. Remember Jalen Smith? Yeah, that's Jalen Smith.
Yeah.
He's starting at middle linebacker for them. That's where they're at that spot. So those are problematic spots. The defensive front is where they're better. Dexter Lawrence is a beast. He's played amazing this year. Almost at an all-pro level. Leonard Williams is a quality player. Kayvon Thibodeau's coming off his best game. He's been pretty good, even though he only has one sack. So that's the strength of the defense. But there's plenty to exploit there. I mean, running on the edges against the Giants has been a huge problem. They're not even a good run defense, even though they have a good interior, like I just mentioned.
And it's funny because their numbers aren't good against the run. You're right.
No, because you can run at the edges. They play a lot. A lot of teams are in nickel a lot. You can run at the nickel cornerback and their cornerbacks. If you're just gonna, and I know Washington does do a lot of power runs up the middle. Yeah. If you were gonna do that, that's not the way to success against this team. The way to success is to use speed, get to the edges, and make big plays on the edges in the run game against them.
I think they have with Gibson, they can attack the edges. With Robinson, they love to run inside. So they do have the ability to do that, and I think they would. So, I think that'll be something to watch offensively. Danny Dimes, that's your guy. So where is he?
I'm the conductor.
I know you are. And and it's funny because people always, it seems like he gets judged every game, but you look at the receiving talent, like, I don't know how any quarterback has a chance there, outside of like play action.
It's true. I mean, that's how they hit their plays. I mean, he's doing a lot of the damage with his legs. I'm not just talking about running. I'm talking about making plays. Like, A, they're not a great pass protection team. And B, who's he throwing to? Right. I mean, literally, Marcus Johnson was a midseason waiver claim. He started game. David Sills, the guy who's been on and off the practice squad for years, he started games. Isaiah Hodgins is now starting for them. He was claimed 3 or 4 weeks ago, John. He's starting for them at wide receiver. Kenny Golladay is an afterthought. He barely plays. Plays like, he'll play like 15, 20 snaps and do pretty much nothing. Still hasn't caught a touchdown pass with the Giants.
Amazing.
Yeah, he's
a lot of money.
Totally shot, getting paid $18 million a year. Not doing much. But so that's where they're at. And so it's Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, who's basically played pretty well. You look at QBR. I don't know where he is right now, but going into this last week against the Cowboys, he was 9th. So you're talking about a top 10 quarterback in QBR when he's playing with very little. I mean, it's Saquon Barkley, and that's it. And so he's actually played really well this year. Turnovers are significantly down. I think he's got 4 interceptions, 2 fumbles, so 6 turnovers in 11 games. You're talking about a guy who's over his career averaged, well over a turnover a game. He's at, basically half a turnover a game. So that's a huge difference. The offense is obviously much better schematically. They're setting him up to succeed, not fail.
How so? Because I was going to ask you about how he's cut down on those turnovers, especially the interceptions. How has that scheme helped him do that, in Dable in particular?
A lot of, especially when they play like a team like the Cowboys. You probably see it here against Washington as well, because they have a good front and they could get after the passer. Moving the pocket, using his legs, hitting teams a lot with a lot more play action, motion. I know it sounds like a simple thing, but Jason Garrett was like Mr. Anti-Motion, basically, So real simple things, but they're just, the way they run their offense is smart. You watch it, it makes sense. Everything about it makes sense. Mike Kafka's done it, and Brian Dable. I know the numbers. You look at it like, what are you talking about? The 25th ranked offense is doing well. Yeah, like look at what they have on offense. They've actually done a pretty good job. Like when they need it, they're able to create and make plays.
And that's the thing, and that's why I don't like looking at stats to measure offense growers. You look at the talent, what you're doing with that talent. And again, I look at that roster, I'm like, it's everything you say is like, I still don't know. I asked you I still don't know how they won 7 games. I mean, it's been a remarkable job. And what in those
imagine what we thought when they were 7-2, John. We're like, just throw your hands up. You're like, it's going to regress eventually, and now they're playing a much harder part of the schedule, which will make it interesting because basically going to come down to. I can't see anyone else getting to 9 or 10 wins except for the Giants, Washington, and Seattle.
Right.
Right. And I looked at Washington's schedule. Their schedule's pretty tough down the stretch.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider Cleveland now has Deshaun Watson coming back. And then the Giants, look, they play Washington twice, Philly twice, Minnesota, and Indy. So, I mean, yes, Indy might be is not the hardest game, but the other 5 are tough games. So it's going to be a real grind. Somebody's getting in with 9, in my opinion.
Oh, I definitely think that. It could be both those teams, though, depending on what Seattle does. And the funny thing with Indy, we say that and laugh at them, but yet they play close games. I mean, they had this team. They had the Eagles, and then against the Steelers, they laid an egg, but still, like
it was still close. They had a chance to tie at the
end. Right. So
the Giants are not good enough where they can go into any game these days. Maybe Houston and be like, okay, they're going to win this game. Like every game's going to be a slog for them. They're not explosive enough to go in and say they're definitely going to win this game. I mean, that's these 2 games with Washington are going to be very interesting. The Giants absolutely 100% need at least one of them. And then from a Washington perspective, they need 1, maybe 2, I guess, right?
I think if Washington can split, they're in good shape, and I think, but then it comes down to what Seattle does as well. But I think if Washington can get a split, I think they need.
The Giants lose a tiebreaker to Seattle right now. They went out there and got handled pretty easily.
Oh, that's right. That's right. So, yeah.
That does factor into it for the Giants.
And I also wonder about Seattle staying power, but they also have a softer schedule down the stretch because
they got the Rams twice, I think.
Yeah. And you look at the NFC East. I mean, I put out the stat like 2 years ago, the record was just abysmal. And now it's the best record in the NFL. I mean, it's just imagine like this team is 7-5 and in last place.
I'm pretty sure when I talked to you at the beginning of the year, I said I thought this division would be better than everybody expected. Part of that, John, it's a huge portion of the NFL. The schedule was set up. They had when you looked at strength of schedules, the 4 NFC East teams were near the top, right? They got to play the AFC South, which isn't very good. They got to play the NFC North, which aside from Minnesota, as turned out, isn't very good, right?
So, Detroit took care of these teams. Ironically.
True. But in general, the division isn't great.
Right.
I mean, the only team with a winning record is the Vikings, and nobody even thinks the Vikings are legit.
Right. So Saquon Barkley, we're in on him. This guy is playing at a different level. And obviously he had the injury and all that. But what's going on with him? Is there something different other than just being healthy? Because this is seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, but the best he's played since he's come in the NFL.
Well, that was the case. It's kind of tailed off here. You look at 3 of the last 4 games. So the question around Saquon is now, is he wearing down? Because the Giants have used him at 82, 83% of their offensive snaps this year. Think about that. That's an insane number for a running back. There is nobody even close in the NFL. I mean, you look at a guy like Derrick Henry who carries the load for his team. He's under 70% of the team's total snaps because at least he goes out on passing downs. Dontrell Hilliard comes in. Saquon's playing 82, 83% of the Giants' offensive snaps this year. Their offense is built around him, and he was running harder, faster, really than I had ever seen, and that's why you saw the breakout. From now, I think there's still something left in him. The offensive line getting healthier is going to help him out, but he's played at a really high level this year. The numbers have dipped, so that you're catching him right now at the right time. But still, the game plan, and that's part of the problem, is that every team comes in, they're like, okay, stop Saquon. That's all we care about. Okay, we'll leave you one-on-one. Beat us one-on-one. Darius Slayton could win some one-on-ones, but we'll take our chances. That you guys they can't win consistently one-on-one, and that's proven to be true.
And that's the thing is because our teams, I know that you had the stat that I think we ran a story on the ESPN or the MVP candidates, and Barkley was one of those guys. And you had the stat, I think that has he faced the most 8-man boxes percentage-wise? Is that going up?
It's close. He's up there for sure. I mean, it's climbing and climbing. So I don't know where it's at right now, but he's definitely in the top 3. I mean, teams are just like, okay, try and pass the ball. We beg you to go out. And the Giants have actually come out the last couple of games and tried to pass the ball early. And it actually, I think, has negatively affected the run game. Because what they had done is they ran the ball, even if there was no success early. And it seemed to have paid dividends later in games, right? Wearing down teams. That was a real thing. Now they say, okay, everyone's stacking the box. They tried a couple times to come out early and hit some big plays. And then the running game never got going, and you're not wearing the other team down. So it's a real fine line. I expect the Giants to come out in this game and I thought this last week, and they didn't do it against Dallas. Right. Just pound the ball. But that's if they don't, then they're only hurting themselves, because that's their best way. That's the formula that this team won early in the year. That's really the only way they can win, because they're not built to win any other way.
Jordan, after talking to you, because as I think I get this game wrong every year when it's in New York, except for last year. I did pick Washington to win, but it seems like every time.
Well, usually you should just pick the Giants. They have had a ton of success against them.
It's weird, and especially there. Yeah, and especially there that, and despite all, it's always like every time this team goes up there and they're playing the Giants, they're in some sort of disrepair. They've lost a couple in a row. They're 1-3, and Eli's getting this, and then they go out and beat him, and then this guy and Daniel Jones turns the ball over a ton. Then he doesn't against these guys. Yeah. So it's always something weird, but we'll see. So Jordan, you got a last word?
Yeah, I don't know how much that applies right now, because everything changes, right? This is a new coaching staff again, and the schemes change. The Giants are playing completely new schemes. So again, I don't think it really applies. It's just one of those things you just can't put your finger on, but it just is,
You can't. So, Jordan, thanks a lot for coming on, and look forward to seeing you on Sunday, man. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jordan for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back with my keys and predictions that'll likely be out on YouTube, especially on Saturday morning, and maybe late Friday night or early Saturday morning on the podcast. So there you go. There may be a bonus podcast on Friday morning. Can't guarantee it. Hoping to talk to a player. If I do, we'll put one out. If not, I will talk to you with my keys and predictions again Friday night, Saturday morning. So I will talk to you next time.